My husband left me right after I gave birth because he wanted to chase freedom, and that's when I made him face the pain he caused. My husband and I both work in a publishing house, and we met while we were assigned to the same team for a project. The project was later scrapped, but we enjoyed each other's company while working together. He asked me out as soon as our team was disbanded, and we hit it off on our first date. I dated him for about 2 years before he eventually proposed to me. I felt it was a little too soon, but he kept saying he was sure I was the one for him and wanted to spend the rest of our lives together. Thinking about the things he said now makes me gag, and I want to hit myself for being so naive. I fell for his words, and he walked out on me when it wasn't all rainbows and sunshine. We were married for 1 year, and I had no plans of having a baby anytime soon. I'm 28, for crying out loud, and I'm too career-driven to even think about being responsible for another human life. I was nowhere near ready to be a mom, but life doesn't always go as planned. I found out I was pregnant. It was accidental and a shock that changed my life entirely. One day, I was living my 20s like there was no tomorrow, and then suddenly, I had to decide whether or not I wanted to keep the baby. No matter how much I hated the idea of being a mother or how unprepared I was, I couldn't just decide on a whim to abort the child, and it wasn't completely my choice either. Of course, I had the final say, but my husband got to weigh in on the matter. It took us about 1 week to process the fact that I was actually pregnant, and then the fight started. I wasn't ready and didn't want to be a mom. My primary reason was my career. I had taken up the position of head manager for our editing team, and my husband started working under me, which in itself was a source of some tension between us. Then we disagreed on whether or not to keep the child. My husband said it was the right time, and he wanted to be a father. He kept saying how much this meant to him and that I should think about our family too. I, on the other hand, kept thinking that if I had the baby, I'd have to take a break from work, and the first year as a new head is a crucial one. Moreover, how could I bring a child into this world when there was a chance I might not be able to be the best mom? Doesn't that innocent unborn child deserve a good family? So, we kept circling around the same points and kept fighting. Eventually, he said he'd be a stay-at-home dad, and I wouldn't have to give up anything. He said he'd take the leave so I could return to work within 1 month. He kept saying how this family was above everything else for him, and eventually, we decided to have the baby. I noticed things started to change in the 7th month of my pregnancy. My husband began to alienate himself from me and would work overtime. I questioned him a few times about his behavior, but he kept saying it was all in my head and that my hormones were making me delusional. I was a fool to believe maybe it really was just my messed up pregnancy hormones and that I was overthinking things. It was true because I had nothing to do at home all day. I kept watching Netflix and ordering food. The only time I was active was during yoga sessions. So, I ignored all his behavior and tried to control my mood swings too. I was also feeling guilty because my husband had to deal with my mood swings, which were quite a wild ride, to be honest. Well, I gave birth 3 weeks ago, and I realized my relationship had gone past the point of saving when I was alone at the hospital. If it wasn't for my mom and my best friend, I wouldn't have made it through the delivery. We kept calling my husband, but he didn't pick up his calls, and his phone eventually went off. The whole time post-delivery in the hospital, I kept thinking about what could be the reason he couldn't even manage to tell me. I went through anger, pity, and depression all at once. At one point, I was ready to kill my husband on sight, and that actually created some problems with my health because the doctor had clearly instructed me not to stress. Yet, that was the only thing I was able to do. When I came home after 1 week at the hospital, my husband came back. Both my parents and my friend were with me when he told me that he had been thinking about our life and had decided he wanted out. He said now that he was a father, he realized he couldn't take responsibility for a child, he couldn't give up on his job and his life. He said the last few months were miserable, and that made him see he didn't want to live this kind of life. That was enough to send me over the edge because I charged at him, and if not for my dad holding me back, I would have definitely broken his jaw at the very least. But I'm glad my dad held me back because I avoided a lawsuit. I was pissed because he was the one who said he'd shoulder everything so I wouldn't have to completely give up on my life. He said we'd be a family, and I would never be alone, but he couldn't even make it through the pregnancy. I wasn't going to just sit back and let him have his way, so I did the only thing that was within my power. I was the head, and he worked under me. I had full power to choose my team, so I fired him. The publishing house was a small sublet of a Penguin house, so the entire office was managed by the senior manager, who's the only one above me. It was a good thing he let me handle the hiring and laying off process. That was 3 weeks ago. I wrote here today because my husband came back crying to me. Word travels fast in that industry, as not a lot of media houses are active nowadays. I guess he was having trouble getting a job, and after I filed for divorce, he knew childcare alone would make him go broke. So, he crawled back to me, apologizing for his behavior. He said he was confused and didn't know any better, but I didn't believe a single word out of his mouth. I told him there's no way I'm taking back the divorce case or letting him come back into my life. I didn't think about my daughter, who was going to have to grow up without a father, and kicked him out of my house. Am I the asshole for doing that when he did come back, or did I go too far in punishing him? In my opinion, he deserves everything that's coming his way, but I need a third person's opinion who isn't involved personally in our lives. A lot of you are saying I'm a doormat and an asshole. I know what my faults are without you pointing them out. I did listen to my husband, and that's where it all went wrong. It's true that I was neither ready nor did I want a baby yet in my life, but that doesn't mean I never wanted to start a family. My husband did convince me to keep the baby and start a family, but now that he's gone, I'm in no way going to abandon my daughter. I love her, and she's my responsibility. Yes, I regret that I have to make a lot of sacrifices for her, but just because I'm regretting some things, it doesn't mean I'm going to let her starve to death. In the end, the choice was mine, and I'm going to see it through. As for my husband, he can rot for all I care. He did try to contact me a few more times, but I've blocked his number. The only time I'll talk to him will be in front of a judge and my lawyer. He made his choice, and no amount of crying, pleading, and apologizing is going to change it. I wasn't sure if I'd be able to raise this child alone, but, thankfully, I have people in my life who are willing to step up and help me out. It was getting harder for me to look after Emily, that's what I named her, while recovering from pregnancy by myself. I ended up breaking down in front of my mom, and she decided then and there that she's moving in. I was so grateful to her because I'm the kind of person who'd never ask for help and would only accept it when it's offered. My mom knows that about me and didn't even leave me a choice in the matter. Since she started staying around 24/7, I was able to catch a break. It's been 2 months since I've joined back at the office, but for the first 6 weeks, I was mostly working from home. Now that my mom is around, I'll be able to go back in person and have a better handle on things. I was afraid that I'd have to quit altogether for a while, but I'm glad things are working themselves out. My divorce is still hanging in the air, though. After my husband realized that I'm not going to take him back, he started fighting for custody of Emily. I guess he was thinking he'd be able to negotiate with me like that, but I'm not backing down. Both my parents and my friend were there when he declared he didn't want to be a father, and they testified for it. I just wish this cursed case wouldn't drag out anymore, and I can get him out of my life permanently. I finally got the divorce and custody of my kid. I refused to back down, and I think my husband was losing a lot of money over this, so he finally agreed to let me have full parental rights. He gave up on any kind of visitation rights and said he doesn't want anything to do with Emily. I could see the look of disgust on the judge's face. She declared the conflict closed. Now, the only thing that connects me to my ex-husband is the monthly child support he'll be transferring to my bank account, and I couldn't be happier about it. Finally, he's out of our lives, and I can start healing and moving on. Not the asshole. That man deserves nothing less than the absolute worst. You're not the asshole, and consider yourself lucky for dodging a bullet. I know from experience how manipulative some spouses can be, but you should be happy that you found his reality sooner and didn't waste 12 to 15 years of your life on him. My boyfriend and I have been together for 4 years. We lived separately. He was 30 and lived with his parents, while I was 31 and lived with my 6-year-old. We had our baby on September 14th. The baby shower was sometime in August. His aunt decided to throw a baby shower for him. She said it would be a male's version of a baby shower, men only, but that was a lie. She invited his mother, her daughter, his cousin, and herself, of course. She said I wasn't allowed to come. If it were a men-only baby shower, then why were those women there? Also, that would only make sense if it were a bachelor party. I was carrying the baby, and I wasn't allowed to be there. All that my boyfriend said to me was that it was out of his control. I feel like he should have stood up for me and said that it didn't sound fair. It should be a baby shower for both of us. Every baby shower I had been to always had both parents. Also, I didn't feel like he deserved a party looking like he's the father of the year because he didn't even show up to many of my baby appointments, except for 2 of them. One was when we found out the gender. It was on my birthday, but he had to leave shortly after the appointment because he was spending the day with his mom on my birthday. Also, they lived together. Another appointment he came to was a 3-hour glucose test, but he spent half that appointment on the phone with his mother. Also, he wasn't there much for me during the pregnancy. When I was throwing up or needed help lifting something, I had to do it mostly by myself. Again, we are together. Maybe this would make sense if we weren't together. He tells me that the baby shower wasn't out of spite, that it was supposed to be guys only with the exception of his mother, aunt, and cousin, yet I'm the mother. I had no idea how many views and comments I'd get. I appreciate the support from a lot of people on here. Answers to some of your questions. No, This isn't the first time I've been treated badly by them. This time just happened to really bother me because it did make me feel like they were doing this to take my baby away from me. Also, anything involving my kids would make me want to be defensive. I also question why my 6-year-old boy wasn't invited since he is, in fact, a boy. I did say it made me feel like I was a surrogate. Yeah, surrogates still get treated better than that. I do feel like the baby shower was for him and his mom. I do feel like I'm the baby mama that they all hate. I do agree that he didn't stand up for me when they asked him if they could plan that event. He could have said that it was not right to exclude me, but he didn't, he went along with it. They all claim it wasn't to exclude me, but who excludes the mother from an event for her baby? I made sure not to have them at the hospital because I didn't want a group of people who didn't like me to be around when I'm trying to recover from my C-section and have the privilege to meet the baby after being excluded from an event for my own son. Why would I be the asshole if you even think this? He is your boyfriend? No, he is not. He may be with you at times for whatever reasons, but it is not because he is your boyfriend. His family is his heart, not you. You need to start working with legal authorities and attorneys to get some child support paperwork in order and make sure you get legal custody. I can see his mommy pushing him for custody so she can be mommy to this baby, not you. Your 6-year-old is watching this unfold, learning from you what a true relationship is. Do better, set better examples for your child. Does he live with you now or still with mommy? You wrote, again, we are together. No, your words say differently, your words say you are not. Did your family or friends throw you a baby shower? Did he attend? Did his family attend? Where are all the items from his baby shower? At his mommy's house? The baby shower was 100% out of spite. They are making sure you know your place in that family. Fill out the court papers and move it along. This is not a person you want to raise a baby with. Don't let him and his mother beat you to court. Not the asshole. So, I have 4 children, 2 from my previous marriage and 2 from my current marriage. My first wife passed away when our children were both under 3 years old. She and I made a promise before we had our children to each deposit $350 into their account every month for their education. After she passed, I felt it was my job to fulfill her part of our promise. I couldn't afford to deposit $700 each, so I lowered the amount to $450 each. I also do the same for my 2 other children, though the amount is $200. My current wife had no problem with the amount I gave my children and our children. However, when I increased the amount to $550 for my children and $250 for our children, she did have a problem with it. She finds it unfair that I gave my 2 older children $100 more and our 2 other ones just $50. I explained to her why it's $100 more for my 2 oldest. Their mother is no longer alive to fulfill her promise, so I'm doing it for her. It's 50% from me and 50% from her. She still thinks it's unfair and finds it annoying that my dead ex is dictating our finances. She said I should treat all my children equally and give them an equal increase. I explained again that I'm their only parent, and they only have me to save up for their future. Our children still have 2 parents to save up for them. I told her she could add the other $50. I also told her that I didn't appreciate her calling her my dead ex. She's not an ex, she's still my wife. I told her that I find it weird that she is so intimidated by someone who is not alive. She screamed at me after I told her that and stormed off. She hasn't spoken to me since Friday. I've been wrestling with doubts about a decision I made, and the more I think about it, the more I question whether it's truly fair. In my mind, it seemed like the right thing to do, but I'm starting to worry that my 2 youngest children might feel shortchanged or overlooked. I may have also overstepped when I mentioned that my current wife felt intimidated by my first wife. That comment came from a place of frustration, and I regret letting it slip out in the heat of the moment. So, the question weighing on me is this: am I wrong for giving my 2 oldest children more money than the younger ones? Let's unpack this from different angles to explore whether my actions are justified or if I've made a misstep. From one perspective, I don't believe I'm in the wrong here. My decision to give more money to my 2 oldest children stems from a desire to honor the financial contributions their late mother, my first wife, would have made if she were still here. It feels like a way to keep her memory alive and to fulfill a promise we made together when we were raising our children. The idea was that each of us would contribute to their future, particularly for things like education or other significant expenses. When she passed away, I felt a deep responsibility to carry on that commitment, not just for myself but for her as well. It's a gesture that holds emotional weight for me, a way to ensure that her love and intentions for our children continue to have an impact. However, my current wife doesn't see it this way, and I'm starting to understand why she might feel hurt or sidelined. In a moment of frustration, she referred to my first wife as my dead ex, which struck me as harsh and out of character. I don't think she meant it maliciously, It likely slipped out in the heat of an argument, but it's a red flag that she's been harboring some unresolved feelings about my first wife's lingering presence in our family dynamic. I can't help but wonder if her reaction stems from feeling like she's competing with a memory, or perhaps she feels that my decision to allocate more money to my oldest children undermines her role as a partner in our blended family. This situation is complicated because our family's financial arrangements are intertwined. My current wife and I share joint finances, and while we've worked hard to build a life together, I've taken it upon myself to continue the monthly contributions that my first wife used to make. To me, this feels like a way to honor the past while providing for my children's future. I never intended for it to come across as favoritism, but I can see how my younger children or my wife might perceive it that way. The last thing I want is for anyone in our family to feel less valued, but I'm struggling to balance my loyalty to my first wife's memory with the needs of my current family. Is it fair to prioritize a promise from the past over the harmony of the present? I'm not sure, but I believe my intentions are rooted in love, not division. On the other hand, I have to consider the possibility that I'm being unfair, even if that wasn't my intention. When my first wife was alive, we had an agreement that we'd each contribute a set amount to our children's future every month. It was a practical arrangement at the time, one that made sense given our shared responsibilities as parents. But now that she's gone, I've taken it upon myself to continue those payments, effectively acting as both parents for my two oldest children. Meanwhile, my current wife isn't making similar contributions for our two younger children, and I haven't asked her to. This creates an imbalance, one that I didn't fully consider until now. From my wife's perspective, and perhaps from the perspective of our younger children, this arrangement could easily look like favoritism. Why should my oldest children receive more money than their younger siblings, especially when all the funds are coming from our shared family income? I can imagine how confusing and hurtful this might be for my younger kids as they grow up. They might wonder why their older siblings get more, and it's not hard to see how they could interpret it as me valuing them less. That thought breaks my heart, because I love all four of my children equally. But actions speak louder than words, and right now, my actions might be sending a message I never intended. Looking back, I can see why my wife is upset. Our joint finances mean that every dollar I allocate to my oldest children is a dollar that could have been used for our entire family, including her and our younger kids. By continuing the tradition of my first wife's contributions, I've inadvertently created a financial hierarchy that privileges my older children. It's not as simple as saying, this is what their mother would have wanted, because she's not here to make those contributions herself. If she had left behind a trust or a specific fund for her children, that would be one thing, those resources would clearly belong to them. But what I'm doing now is taking money from our shared pool and distributing it unevenly. That's a choice I'm making, and I have to own the consequences of that choice. Another way to look at this is through the lens of fairness and equality. My current wife contributes $100 a month to her two children, which is her way of providing for their future. If I'm contributing to all four children, the base amount I give to each child should be the same, with any additional contributions, such as my wife's $100 or the extra I give to my oldest children, considered separately. Right now, I'm giving my oldest children significantly more, using the justification that I'm fulfilling a promise to my first wife. But that promise wasn't about a specific dollar amount, it was about ensuring our children's needs were met, particularly for things like education. The problem is that I'm applying an old agreement to a new reality. I have 4 children now, not just 2, and they all deserve to be treated with the same love and care. By giving my oldest children more, I'm creating a disparity that could breed resentment, not just between my children but also between me and my wife. She's right to be upset, because my decision undermines the principle of equality in our family. It's not about whether my first wife's intentions were valid, they absolutely were. But I need to ask myself whether those intentions justify treating my younger children differently. The argument that my oldest children have 2 parents contributing to their future doesn't hold up under scrutiny either. My first wife isn't here, and I'm the one making those contributions on her behalf. That money isn't coming from a separate estate, it's coming from the same financial pool that supports our entire family. By prioritizing my oldest children, I'm effectively saying that their needs, or their mother's memory, are more important than the needs of my younger children. That's not what I believe in my heart, but it's the message my actions might be sending. I need to take a step back and consider how I can create a system that feels fair to everyone, while still honoring the spirit of the commitment I made to my first wife. This situation has forced me to confront some difficult truths about fairness, loyalty, and family dynamics. I want to honor my first wife's memory and ensure that my oldest children receive the support she would have wanted for them. At the same time, I need to prioritize the unity and happiness of my current family, including my wife and our 2 younger children. The challenge is finding a way to balance these competing priorities without creating resentment or division. One possible solution could be to establish a clear and equal baseline contribution for all 4 children, with any additional funds, whether from my wife's contributions or my desire to honor my first wife, treated as separate, transparent additions. This would require an open conversation with my wife to ensure we're on the same page and that she feels valued as a partner. It would also mean talking to my children, when they're old enough, to explain why certain decisions were made, so they don't misinterpret my actions as favoritism. Ultimately, I want to do right by all my children and my wife. My frustration led me to say things I regret, and my doubts have made me realize that good intentions aren't enough. I need to make decisions that reflect fairness and love for everyone in my family, not just a select few. This situation is a reminder that blended families come with unique challenges, and navigating them requires empathy, communication, and a willingness to adapt.